Hey, this is Steve from myothercareer.wordpress.com, and in today's video I wanted to talk a little bit about dialogue. Dialogue is writing good dialogue is what separates an average writer from a great writer. Dialogue is probably the most difficult thing that I run into when writing a screenplay because dialogue is not natural language. If you were to take a tape recorder and record a conversation that you have with your wife or your significant other or your friends or whatever. Transcribe that into script form and then compare that to a conversation in a screenplay. And it will be very apparent that dialogue and natural language are drastically different. In natural language, we talk around subjects. We don't necessarily get to the point. We give a lot of miscellaneous information. We talk about things unrelated to the topic at hand. We are specific about avoiding certain words. We may include technical jargon that is unnecessary. We try to make ourselves sound smarter than we really are, or less smart than we really are, depending on the audience we're around. Dialogue is specific, it's to the point, and it's there to get certain information across for that scene or sequence. That's it. Think about how you might discuss, if you've ever talked to a policeman, say you've witnessed a crime, or something went down, you had to talk to a cop. Right? The back and forth between the cop, between yourself and the policeman, it's going to take a little while. Maybe it takes 4 or 5 minutes before you get across the information that cop needs to know. Compare that to one of the information gathering scenes in Law and Order Criminal Intent or Law and Order Special Victims Unit. They go and they talk to some guy working at the docks. Conversation maybe takes 30, 45 seconds. They get everything they need to know in those 30 to 45 seconds. The scene starts as they meet. They immediately go into conversations. As soon as that very specific piece of information they're looking for is revealed, scene's over. They move on to the next thing in the screenplay or the conversation. And that is that's the challenge that a writer is faced with, is being able to make language or make dialogue look like real language or read like real language without actually being real. Because dialogue isn't. It's not real language. It's just words that look like real language. Case in point, the opening sequence in Act 2B for Pride is Forever, I wrote that last night. And the conversation was originally 6 pages. Really what I did is I write until I get what I've said is the message of the scene across, until I'm comfortable that I know the setting, I know how they're going to talk, I know how the characters are going to move about. Once I've got the general concept of the scene down, then I go in and I get rid of all the unnecessary stuff. In this case, I had 4 pages of unnecessary stuff. The whole beginning of the conversation, which was really, in essence, a warm-up for me, was completely unneeded. So I got rid of it. I cut right to an important detail. The scene comes right in with Victoria revealing a very important detail about the history of her and her father and her family. The conversation with her and Doug go on from there, and Doug reveals some information, and then they go into some other stuff about school, stuff that's interesting or you would ask in real life, but for the purposes of the screenplay is completely unneeded. So I got rid of that. That was about 2 pages worth of stuff. So in essence, what I was left with was the middle 2 pages of the 6 pages I had written, and that's all that needed to be. That's all that needed to be there. And so that's all I kept. I tinkered with the conversation a little bit more as I'm really starting to get comfortable with writing the characters, because dialogue takes a while before you get down. You may read or hear from people saying that it's not until you get to about the middle of the script that your characters really start talking to you. And I used to think that was ridiculous. It didn't make any sense to me until I'd written my 6th or 7th screenplay and I realized, it's right. Until you're in there and you're working in these people's heads, it takes a while for you to get down the little idiosyncrasies about how they would talk, phrases they would use, how they structure their information, how they go about revealing stuff to other characters. And that takes a while for you to get real comfortable with that. So, the first parts of Act 1 and really the tail end of Act 1 there's some, just as one person emailed me, absolutely dreadful dialogue in there. But that's to be expected. The first half of your script is what you're going to do most of the rewriting in when you go through and polish it up before you consider it a first draft. And a lot of it is dialogue. Actually, most of it is dialogue. because you talk around things. You tend to write, or at least I tend to write, how I think these people would talk in real life. And it takes a while for me to go through and get it down to the dialogue they need to be saying in the script to get across the information that's important to the scene or sequence. So I just wanted to touch base a little bit on that and give you my viewpoints on writing dialogue and kind of how I go about putting it together. And you know, I still think to this day writing dialogue is the hardest thing for me, and I think for a lot of writers in a screenplay. You can have a great story, but the horrible dialogue can ruin it. You know, I mean, even look at the movie like Titanic, or go back to James Cameron, Titanic or Avatar. You know, real fun movies, great grandiose stories, but the dialogue's You know, I mean, it's not that great compared to plenty of other movies out there that just have amazing dialogue and amazing conversations. So, you know, you can see even some of the hugest or some of the hugest names in motion pictures today. You know, they may write their own movies and they may be great movies, but you know, sometimes they don't even write great dialogue. It's a very difficult thing to do, and very few writers are amazing at it. Hopefully, one day I will be. I doubt it, but you know, I read up on it as much as I can, and I encourage you to read up on it and experiment and, you know, do whatever it takes to get your dialogue better. So until next time, this is Steve for myothercareer.wordpress.com. Keep writing.